What's up?
What's happening? We have a name, Mark.
We have a name.
We have a name.
We have named the podcast.
And what is the name?
The Market Has Spoken podcast.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I like it too. I'm kind of digging it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. There's a few things that I like. One is the market. Two, we're speaking.
right.
Market is speaking, right?
We're speaking about the real estate market.
That's right.
The market has spoken.
Yeah.
Plus, I managed to slip my own name in there.
Mark will be bigger than everything else.
I'm a megalomaniac. No, I'm kidding. So I thought today we would start, since this is our first official podcast, talking about the NAR settlement. Since we've been hearing lots of media about it, I've been listening to a lot of people commenting about it. And I have to say, most of what I've been hearing as comments about it, I also don't agree with.
Yeah. Yeah. And comments both from the general consumers as well as agents not knowing what is going on.
Right.
And how this is going to impact us sort of moving forward. And I think in Georgia, we're better than a lot of the other states out there. So
Definitely.
I think we have a unique advantage of being here because it's been the norm for quite some time.
Yeah. I mean, we started buyer brokerage in 1992 in this state. So we've been doing buyer brokerage agreements mandatorily since then. Not saying that everyone does it as soon as they should. Most of them do it at the latest possible moment, right? Is right before you write a contract. That being said, the law has been in place and a lot of us were trained properly and do it at our first substantial conversation about real estate.
Yeah.
So I think Georgia is poised to get through this better than almost any other state because of that. The only thing that's really changing for us is the people that put listings in the MLS now are not going to physically input the commission data in there, right? Yeah. So we won't be able to look at the MLS and get that commission data, but we will be able to call the agent and get the commission data. We'll be able to text them, check their website. Like there will be other ways, other workarounds to get the information we need. Yeah. Because we do need that information, right? Sure. Because if you have a buyer who's agreed to pay you 3.5% and a particular listing is not offering commission or is offering less than 3.5%, then the buyer has to make up that difference. Sure. So we need that info.
And what is allowed is marketing concessions, which you could say that will help the buyer in some way, shape, or form towards their bottom line, right? So builders have been doing it forever. It's just the agent community sort of getting around that as well.
Right.
But the good old fashioned pick up the phone and call the agent or text works just as well.
Right. Imagine that we'll actually have to communicate with our co-op agents. What?
Yes. Yes.
What a crazy idea that is. Oh, wow. But I think besides that, I think it's also going to mean that if you are going to work with a buyer, you have to be confident in presenting your commission because we only get paid if someone hires us.
Yep.
And if we aren't confident in presenting why you should hire me, then the consumer isn't going to hire you, right? If you can explain to me why I'm going to pay thousands of dollars to get your expertise, then, I'm going to go on to another agent who can.
This is what we should have been doing all along.
Right.
And we didn't because we as the industry led the buyer to believe that they're never going to pay us. And again, in Georgia, the reality was the buyer did pay us because our forms are set up such that way. And now it's having the conversation, hey, here's what I do. Here's all the things that I do. Now you have to tell them all the things you do because they don't know all that.
Right.
And here's the fee that I charge to be able to do all of that. Right. And use your unique background experience to say, you know what? I know more about this than the average agent.
Correct.
I'm charging for this. Right. And it's being able to portray the value such that they can say, I'm good with it. Let's roll with it.
And I think part of that is being able to know your numbers and be able to communicate how much do you save your average buyer with your negotiating skills?
Yep.
How much off the sales price do you get? How much in concessions do you get? What issues have you been able to work through? I personally am proud of the fact that I've gotten people out of deals that were not good for them.
Yeah.
Properties that had more issues than they were able to financially or emotionally deal with. Yeah. So I think those stats are important.
Absolutely.
And we're just going to have to be able to know those numbers and be able to articulate that to someone who's looking to hire us.
Absolutely. And you know, the other big thing too is sometimes it's not about how much money can I save you. Sometimes it's, can I get you the house that you want to go after?
Absolutely. Well, definitely in a strong seller's market like we have right now, for sure. When there's limited inventory,
Sure.
getting the house sometimes is the buyer's primary goal.
Yep. And if you can get a deal on it, great. But
Right.
you want the house more than you want anything else. And so if you are strong at winning in multiple offer scenarios, you're the agent they should hire.
Another stat you
Track of the stats.
Right.
Yeah.
Another number you can quote while you're doing your presentation to buyers.
Yep.
The other thing is, I've seen so many people online talking about sellers are now not allowed by law to pay commission. Sellers are never going to pay a commission. Prices are going to drop. Like all of these crazy like theories, and a lot of it's driven by inaccurate headlines that
media,
the mainstream media has actually put out there.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because you would think that they would do a little research before they wrote something. But I think in that 24-hour news cycle, in the haste to get information out, they just go with it at an angle. Right. So look, it's a clickbait world.
Yeah.
We get it.
Yep.
You know, no harm, no foul media.
Negativity sells.
And
You get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And negativity sells. And I think there's an opportunity here for us to set some of that straight. Right. So the first thing is that the sellers aren't allowed to pay commissions to buyer's agents.
That is false.
That is false. Thank you. Yes. There's no law written, right? This isn't a legal, this is not legislation. It is a civil case that resulted in a professional association changing its rules for its members.
Sure.
And because most of the MLSs in the country are owned by either wholly or partially a realtor association, then that means that the MLSs are going to change their behavior. Right. We're unique in Georgia because we have, or in Atlanta rather, we have two.
We have two.
Two MLSs. One of them is owned by an association. One of them is not.
Yeah.
Our FMLS, First Multiple Listing Service, is not owned by an association. So they're not obligated to do that. But, you know, they have yet to say what they're going to do. And we'll get into that too, because there might be some other factors that they're thinking about to keep themselves out of litigation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no hard and fast rule. Like no one can tell sellers what they want to pay, right? At the end of the day, they're paying for a service for the listing agent to be able to sell their home. If they want to pay a marketing expense or whatever it is that they want to pay the buyer's agent to incentivize a ton of buyer's agents to go find buyers for their property, they can do that. Nothing says you can't.
Right. And I'm glad you said a marketing expense because that's what it is, right? Offering a buyer's agent commission is an opportunity to get the largest number of qualified agents who, by the way, work with the largest number of qualified buyers into your property. Right. So you want to attract them to your property. So it is a marketing expense.
Yes.
And you can offer it, you can not, or you can decide how much to offer. Like that's always been up for negotiation. Nothing there has ever changed. I think the difference is before it was almost understood that the seller would pay it, mostly because a lot of buyers don't have enough cash to come to the table with a down payment plus closing costs plus a commission. So they have, you know, buyers have been paying this all along. So that's the other sort of misleading headline that buyers now have to pay a commission to their realtors. They've been paying it all along.
The buyer brings the money to the table.
Right. Or you know,
a lender,
a loan to the table, which is someone else's money that they're borrowing, right? But the bottom line is they've been paying it all along. The interesting thing is they've been paying it in a way that's actually more expensive for the consumer, which is financing most of it. You know, depending on the loan to value, somewhere between 80 and 97% of it is getting financed with the mortgage, which is not a cheap way to pay commissions, by the way.
No.
Right? Because you're paying interest on top of a fee.
30 years.
For 30 years, if just keep it that long. And I think it's great that people now sort of know because of this lawsuit, they will now understand better that they have the option to pay that up front.
Sure.
So they're not building it into their 30-year loan, right? So I think that's one win for the consumer for sure.
Absolutely. And they get to, again, both sides in this case, because the conversation was about decoupling.
Right.
Both sides get to negotiate who they want to hire and how much they want to pay. And that's what comes out of this, right?
Right.
And people that are really, really good can charge what they want to charge, and people that are really, really good on the listing side, they can also charge what they want to charge. So the quote that I heard is, how much you pay is likely not changing. Jeff Glover said that.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you're paying that's changing. So for a seller, you might be accustomed paying 6% on the sell, but now you might say, I only want to pay 3%. Okay, well, you're still going to have to pay 3% on the buy side. So again, what you're paying isn't necessarily changing. It's how you're paying it.
Right.
And 2 transactions or 1 transaction, or whatever it is.
Absolutely. The other sort of interesting thing that we're hearing in the media is that, prices are going to fall, commissions are going to fall, like all of these wild speculations, which are really interesting because when you stop and think about either one of those, right, like prices are going to fall. Why? Why would prices fall?
Well, because the seller doesn't have to pay potentially a buyer's agent.
Right.
So they're just going to lower the price and they don't want to keep any of that money.
Right. Because every seller I've ever worked with is like, oh, I can give up more money and not take it for myself. And because I'm not paying it to someone else, I can give it to the buyer in the form of a reduced price.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so the seller is going to want to net less money. And the value of real estate has always been based on comparable sales, which is another argument is how is that going to be looked at?
Right.
Whether it is paying commission or it is not, like that's hard data to pull, right?
It is.
But at the end of the day, the value of a property is going to be based on the comparable value of the properties that sold around it. It doesn't factor commission in there.
Right.
And if I can sell my house for the same amount of money, I'm going to keep that 100%.
Yep.
Minus any sort of fees I have to give up, right?
Absolutely.
But so the myth is commissions are going down. That's false.
Right. I also think commission is going to go up.
I believe it's going to go up.
I think on average, because the people who are doing the majority of the selling, which are the people who sell more than 4 homes a year.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is, we talked about that earlier today. The stat is 8% of real estate agents, only 8% of real estate agents sell more than 4 houses per year.
Right.
That is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. I mean, but when you think about it, there's such a low barrier to entry. A lot of people get licensed and never do anything with it, right? Or a lot of people get into it, realize how hard it is, that it's a full-time gig, that it's hard to generate leads, that it's not easy, fast money.
No.
And then they get out, or they get their license because they're buying a house, or their neighbor or their friend is buying a house. So they sell that one and then get out, right? Like they can't make a living doing it.
Sure. And they do it to save money. And the biggest misconception is if I get a license and I go buy my own house or I go sell my own house, I can save money by not paying someone else. And the reality is you might be saving the 3% or whatever the fee is that you charge. However, you're giving up probably twice that somewhere else, right? If you let the 8% or better, in this case, top 5%, to be able to represent you, you're going to benefit more. And they're almost always going to benefit you twice the amount that you pay them. That's a service, and you're leaning on someone else's experience to be able to leverage that experience from multiple homes they've sold, as opposed to just the 1 or 2 that you might sell on your own.
Well, I mean, realtors who do this for a living are professional negotiators. They have market knowledge. They are good at justifying a purchase price. Like there are so many things that a professional realtor brings to the table that it's going to save you money, and they're going to have resources to get you quick quotes on any repairs that need to be done during your due diligence period, that kind of thing. So they're going to help you negotiate concessions during the due diligence period as well as on the front end. So, you're right. I think the average agent out there is not selling 4 houses a year or more, which is amazing. And because of that, the professional ones that are out there are really good at what they do and will save you way more than whatever fee they charge in the way they negotiate and in understanding the market.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, you're paying for a fee, right? And that fee is to either sell a house or to buy a house. If you end up with the house that you wanted to sell at a price that you were comfortable with, the service is almost always worth the reward that you got, which was, the exit from a property.
Right.
And that meant you can move on with buying another house or moving to a different state or whatever it may be. It's a service that we provide to be able to sell and buy homes. And you're paying for our experience.
Well, and that's exactly right. The biggest thing I think that consumers don't factor into the equation when they're like, I'm going to represent myself, or I'm going to get a license and be my own agent. It's like, what do they say? A lawyer who's his own client has, or what is the saying?
I think the attorney that has his own client is not
that represents himself as a fool for a client.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So the agent that represents themselves too, if they're not an experienced agent, also has a fool for a client, right?
Yeah.
So that's hilarious. But I forgot where I was going with that. I got so stuck on what was that damn saying? And I know what I was going to say. So the biggest thing people that make those decisions don't understand is they don't know what they don't know, right? When you have experience and you've done hundreds of deals, you have seen a lot of problems. I've been a broker since 2002. I've been a licensed agent since 1999. I have worked with hundreds and hundreds, probably over 1,000 real estate agents and helped them work through their deals. I can tell you, I have seen so many things that no one ever could have foreseen or knew that was even a possibility that have created problems for a transaction. And now know how to work through them just by experience, by having gone through it. And when you haven't gone through it, you don't know because you've just never encountered those hurdles yet. Right. So yes, in theory, if you knew as much as a realtor, you could do that too. And if realtors only open doors, you could save yourself that money. But because being an agent is way more than just opening doors, it has to do with experience, knowledge, expertise. People that don't hire an agent are definitely leaving money on the table every single time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What are some of the other myths that you've come across that you're seeing in the media? I know prices are falling, commissions are going down.
Right.
We think both of those are inaccurate.
Right.
There was even a headline that said, commissions are falling to some percentage of what people are getting paid. And the reality is now agents can negotiate with their own buyers as opposed to so as an agent myself, I have to rely on a listing agent to negotiate a commission for our sale.
Right.
If that listing agent isn't good, I don't want them negotiating for me. I believe in my negotiation power better than I do in any random listing agent.
Right.
Now I can go charge more. And if there's, I think the stat was 8%, right? So 8% of agents sell more than 4 houses. There's only 38,000 agents that sold 40 plus houses in a year out of 1.2, 1.3 million people that are licensed agents. I want one of them representing me. And guess what? Those people, because they know in the top 1, 2, 3%, have the ability to charge more. Because does every attorney charge the same amount?
Yep.
No. In any industry you go to, every person that is seasoned, experienced is always going to be worth more.
Yeah.
Any sports team, it doesn't matter. Whatever industry you look at, that's always going to be the case. So I think commissions might go down for the people that haven't sold houses or that have experience. Maybe true. But for the industry that literally does 90% of the transactions, that's not true.
Right. And I think that's important to note that we as an industry have not done a good job educating the public on what we do.
Sure.
So my hope is that by sort of forcing some agents who didn't have a lot of these conversations on the front end to talk about the value, because we try to make it look easy, right? And, shame on us for doing that, because now people don't know what we do, so they don't understand why we get paid what we get paid.
Sure.
Are there some deals where our dollar per hour is awesome? Absolutely. Sometimes you just have a slam dunk deal and it's easy and you're like, wait a minute, no problems happened. That is the rarity. That is the exception.
Right.
And there are so many deals where the dollar per hour is nowhere near what people would think it is.
Yes.
Right.
And I would argue the dollar per hour on those deals that it's really, really good, because you've got experience to make it a really easy deal for your buyer. Right. Or again, win them the house and so on. because you've encountered problems. I mean, you 22, 23 years of being a broker, you've seen the wildest things in real estate, and you've seen more of them than any other person.
Yeah.
I can call him if I run into a situation. Have you run into this? Chances are you have, and I can navigate that much better,
Right?
because I'm leveraging the experience of you.
Right. Well, and I'm part of your team. Right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm one of the people that is integral in your business
Yeah.
and in a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
And any broker who's been in the business as long as I have has seen a lot and has probably worked through a lot of these problems. And that experience and expertise and just knowing who to call when there's a problem. So even our brand new agents, because they're in our office and they've gone to a brokerage that has experienced leadership, they instantly have someone they can call to connect them with whatever attorney, inspector, appraiser, lender, structural engineer, plumber, whatever professional they need. We can help them work through that and connect with the right person to solve their issue. So like having that expertise is why we are not just door opener. Right? Because even sometimes when the agent themselves isn't an expert, they have a team of people behind them that are. So it's really disheartening to hear, some of how the public sees us, but we have to own that, that we haven't done a good job. And we need to start talking more about these are the things that we've done. Here are some stories of things that have gone wrong that I've worked through. And here's what I've saved my clients. So people understand there is a lot of value and an experienced agent, and they are worth their weight in gold.
Absolutely. And every agent that has done miracles knows about these stories, but we've never really shared them except for within the agent community.
Right.
And those are the people that don't need to know your stories, right? Document your stories and share with people in a way that gives them the confidence, like, oh, you know what? You've been through just about anything. I feel comfortable. Right. And I think that's what it comes down to.
When you can talk about problems that they didn't even know your client didn't even know existed and how you solve them, that gives them a comfort level like, okay, I'm in good hands. Right. So I think, again, we're going to have to do a better job going forward of educating our clients. And I'm actually looking forward to that.
I am too.
It's going to be great.
There are so many people that have done business the wrong way, and we've run into them within the agent community, right?
For sure.
When you're showing listings or whatever, and it's like, how are you an agent? Those are the type of people that these new rules, not laws, rules, are going to petrify.
Correct.
Because they have not been running a business that is based on the ideology of how we should be running our business, right? Being transparent with the consumer. So I think more and more agents are going to leave that have not been doing this the proper way.
And I think it's hard for, people in the business that don't have the experience to justify their fees. So I think we will see, a certain number or a certain percentage of agents get out of the business because it just has now become too hard for them. The people who are at a brokerage where they're explaining how to do this stuff and have these conversations, the people who have the experience and the people who have the numbers to back up their experience that they can articulate to a prospective client, those are the ones who are going to really flourish.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Absolutely. And those people, the metric was what, 40 plus houses? Right. Those are the people that are going to get the 60, 70 plus houses because there are less agents and the number of houses that are going to be sold on any given year is not really going to change. The market is the market.
Right.
And therefore, they're going to have a larger market share of their specific markets.
Agreed. And there's not going to be, there's a lot of prediction of there's going to be a race to the bottom in terms of what people charge. And my answer to that is we've always had people racing to the bottom. There are places that'll...
Can I name them?
Sure, go for it.
Redfin.
Duffy Realty and
like there are so many brokerages that
are discount model
transactional relationship. I'll just throw it in the MLS, and then you have to call the seller directly to do anything. And
nothing wrong with that because that's what they're getting for. As long as the buyer or seller that's doing that understands what they're giving up. And I think that's what most people don't understand when they go to a discount broker. They're looking at a cost, not at the investment in their bottom line.
I was at a mastermind yesterday with Jason, right? And he said, imagine us representing our clients and imagine an attorney situation where the attorney says, hey, do you want to do the arraignment yourself?
Please.
Or do you want to do the closing statements, or do you want to do any part of any attorney situation? And you don't, because you have zero idea how to do it. Right. You might know enough to be like, oh, I at least know the process, but it doesn't make you the expert. Right. And speaking of attorneys, has there ever been a race to the bottom for the attorney industry?
Absolutely.
There's people charging less.
People charging less, but guess what? But most people see a value in a professional with experience.
Exactly.
Right. And I think that's what is going to happen with our market. Yes, there will be the people that are discerning, but we've always had them.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. I do think it's going to open up the opportunity for the skilled professional to charge more, because now there is no longer this public perception about a 6% commission. So there is no standard in people's minds, even though it didn't ever exist. There was market rate, like and for every commodity, for every service, for every product, there is a market, right? And the market price is what a consumer is willing to pay for it at that given time. So at any given time, there's someone who's willing to pay X for that house, and that's what that house is worth. At any given time, there's people willing to pay X for a realtor. And there is a range that people are going to pay within if they can get an exceptional realtor versus a below average realtor. Right.
And you almost have to, like, I'll even argue that you need people that are going to not be the full service agents, right? Because there is a need for those types of agents for a certain subset of people that just have one transaction. They don't care what they get. Here you go. Right. But for the vast majority of the consumers out there, they want the full service experience, which is, hey, here's a set of keys. I'll see you at closing. Because if I'm selling, that's what I want. Don't ask me questions, because I don't know anything.
Make it easy for me. Like, we all have jobs and things going on. We want to hire a professional to take care of what they're hired for, so that we're not doing it. I don't want to do my doctor's job. Like, I don't want to give myself my own whatever exam and go wherever you want with that. I'm not a medical professional. I don't do this every day. And just because I go to the doctor a lot doesn't mean I know as much as the doctor. Right. And just because you have sold a couple of houses, you have to think about the infrequency with which most people purchase or sell a home. Like, it happens a couple of times in people's lifetime. You know, on the high end, 6 or 7 in a lifetime.
If you started early.
And on the low end, once or twice. Right. So there is such an infrequency that even if you were fully knowledgeable the first time, things have changed so much by the second time, because this industry changes constantly. There's no way they would be prepared to do it the second time if they were lucky enough to do it right the first.
By the way, our forms that we write contracts on change twice a year. So if you did it last year and you're thinking about doing it this year, chances are it's already changed. And if you weren't educated enough to learn the contract, you might get screwed on that. Right.
So some of these are really small, subtle changes, but they have a big impact in certain parts of how the contract works. So if you're not constantly staying up with it, you could really screw up. So what does a buyer need to know going forward that maybe they didn't know before?
So in Georgia, buyers have always had to pay the agent that they choose to hire. Nationally speaking, buyers now need to know that if the professional that I'm choosing to hire charges a certain fee and they're not able to get that from the seller, they might have to make up a difference at the closing table. That is essentially the biggest change. The agent might have to make a phone call, send a text, an email, whatever, to find out what that compensation is. But the buyer's always going to know when they write the offer, hey, here's what it is. And you'll know before you get to closing table. That's the biggest thing, that'll never happen, where you don't know how much the difference is. Right. Because the agent should be educating you on what their fee is and how much you should be doing. The lights turned off again.
Okay, I will stand up.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
They were good for another 30 minutes. I think that should just be our time.
No, stop talking. And I moved my arm a couple of times. I thought I got it, but but yeah, so across the country, that's the biggest difference is you will have to potentially pay a difference for the agent you hire.
So when you're preparing to buy a home, you need to look at your costs as not just a down payment. And not just a down payment and closing costs, but a down payment, closing costs, and possibly commission.
Absolutely.
Right? So those are the three sort of categories of fees that you need to be aware of, or monies that you'll need to bring to the table.
Yeah. And again, being in Georgia, that has been the case for several years.
Yeah.
And I even remember having conversations with agents, like in a buyer consultation, we're saying, look, these are the 3 buckets of fees that you need to be mindful of.
Right.
Because Open Doors and all the other discount brokerages out there have already said, I'm not charging full, especially in the heat of the market. Right now, they're back to full whatever fee that they want to pay. But it's been already in the marketplace that people didn't pay what the agent wanted to charge, and in those scenarios, they just have to negotiate it, right? And in most cases, we're able to negotiate more than just the difference on the fee that we charge. So I think that's what you're going to see is a lot of skilled agents rise to the top and say, hey, here's what it is, but you're going to see a benefit.
Right. And as people get into the business brand new, they're, especially in states that haven't already done this, they're going to be learning sort of the right way to do this now.
Yes.
Which has the most transparency for the consumer as far as like, hey, this is what I'm going to do for the money you're going to pay me. So I think those people are actually at an advantage as well, because they don't know any better. They don't have a bad habit to unlearn, right?
Yeah. 32 states, I believe, is the number of states that did not have a law in place that you had to have a brokerage engagement agreement in place. As Mark said, since 92, that's been the law, that you have to have a representation agreement in place before you take a buyer out and write offers and advise them, right? 32 states out of this country, and that's Missouri, that's where the lawsuit was.
Right.
Didn't have that in place.
They did not.
Right. So are buyers at more of a disadvantage in certain states up until now? Yeah, because they weren't told.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that in Georgia, some of these conversations are already happening, and I don't think I'm afraid of what's coming.
Right.
Right. I've been running my business properly so that if anything like this ever happened, it was already a common practice because I learned from you.
Right.
Right. So that's the other big thing is more than half the country didn't know what was coming, and they didn't run their business this way.
Right. And every state sort of, because laws vary so much, every state was different. And now everyone's being raised to a certain standard of accountability and transparency with the consumer, which is, I think, always that part of it's good. Yeah. I do think it's going to have unintended consequences for fair housing, for affordability, and in some cases, transparency as well. And I think those problems will work themselves out as well. Like, I think whenever a major shift in our industry happens, it happens incrementally. Yeah. So the big change happens, and then all the little changes that come after it to fix all the problems that the big change created will take place. So I'm confident that those will happen. Will they happen fast? Probably not. Whenever the government is involved in, changing the way things are done, it doesn't happen overnight. Long term, I think the problems that are created will work themselves out. I think the biggest thing for me is for sellers. Yeah. Right. Like, sellers need to understand, like, you didn't just get a 3% discount on selling your house so that now you can make 3% more. Like, that's not actually what's happened. And it is a marketing fee. It is a way to influence the demand for your house, because we can't influence the supply of the market, right? We can just influence the demand. And by staging your house and photographing with professionals and pricing it properly, and by attracting the most qualified buyers agents with the most qualified buyers to your property, by offering an acceptable or reasonable commission, you are going to get the very best leverage you can have to push the price and demand for your house up. Yeah. So
to caveat what you said too, what do buyers need to know? What do sellers need to know? Right. Hiring the wrong agent, mispricing it, miscalculating. Seller, you want to list here? Great, we'll do that. No problem. Sign. Right. That costs the seller a ton of money.
Yeah.
Oftentimes 10, 15% of the actual value of the home because it sat on the market too long, not enough eyeballs got there. And the part that sellers now need to know, who you hire matters. And that's the same for buyers.
Yeah.
Right. So it can't be my cousin who's never sold a house before.
Right.
Or it can't be my neighbor just because we're friends. It's got to be for your betterment of getting all of your value that you need out of it.
Well, and hopefully because people are no longer using lines like, you don't pay me, I do it for you. All the things that people that have not had proper buyer conversations and consultations to begin with say over the years, because they're not saying those things, they'll no longer think that their cousin is free. And now they're going to see that their cousin's going to cost them, you know, $15,000 or whatever the commission is that you're charging on that particular deal. So they're going to expect like, okay, well, why would I hire so-and-so who's just to give them a leg up and to be nice to them?
Yeah.
I'm paying money. I want to hire a professional.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
I would think that.
Yeah.
Let's see
that. And I think that's what's going to happen, right? The cream is going to rise to the top.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And it's only a matter of time before we see that. I think we're seeing some of that now. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're already getting out of the business that weren't producing and, you know, who got into it during like mid 2020 through, you know, end of 2022, those folks that got in when everything was like business was just coming to you because everyone was looking for a house, it seemed like. A lot of them had business because of the market, not because of their skill set. Right. So now that those skills are necessary, a lot of those people were already leaving the market. And now we've just upped the game on skill set. Right. So you have to be really well versed in presenting and articulating a value proposition when you are being hired and be able to articulate why someone should hire you and why you're worth what you're worth and what you earn. I was thinking about the other day, when is the last time you paid $15,000 or more for a service that wasn't medical?
I don't think I've paid $15,000 for a service.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah. Like even most standard legal things that are done on an everyday basis. You know, you created a family trust and you paid professionals to do that because that's not what we do. Right. Drafting a will, healthcare power of attorney, all of those things, none of that. Like I think the most I've spent was like $3,000 doing some of that stuff with an attorney who was good at what he did. So
my trust was $2,000. Right. And it was nowhere near 15,000. Right. So if you are spending 15,000, it's likely not on a service, it's on a product.
Right.
That you want, and if that's the case, then sure, go spend it, right? That's a really valid point.
Yeah. So the reason I say that is because we have to remember, like, this is a big chunk of money, and if people don't understand why they're paying it, they're not going to want to pay it.
Sure.
Right. If they understand the value they get when they're paying $15,000 or more, and I'm just throwing that out there, saying like, you know,
well, based on average price point,
like on a $500,000 house, which is about our average. If you took like an average of 3%, that's what someone's charging as a buyer's agent these days, and sometimes a lot more. So if you're paying that, you want to know what you're getting. I do, right? So I think we should understand that the public has a genuine interest in wanting to understand before they hire us. And we are going to have to be better at doing that. And those of us who are already doing it are in a much better position for sure.
100%.
So
100%.
Final thoughts?
I think to buyers, right? Just understand value is going to matter. Who you choose to represent you is going to matter. For sellers, understand that you're not going to save money because it's going to come out somewhere else.
Right.
A buyer, they can negotiate that, right? So final comments, I mean, choose who you hire wisely. That's
perfect.
What it comes down to.
And I would say specifically to sellers, it is a marketing fee when you're paying a cooperative commission to a buyer's broker if you're a seller. So make sure that you do it on the front end don't be one of these people who says, I'm willing to pay it, but they're going to have to ask me because I don't want to give it up off the front end. Like, it's marketing dollars. So if you do that, all you're doing is saying, I want to take the cost of the marketing, but I don't want any of the benefits of advertising it.
Yeah.
Right. So think of it as a marketing cost, a marketing expense when you're selling your property, and use it as a tool to leverage the demand on your property to push it up as high as possible, because the higher the demand for your home, the higher the price.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't think I could say it any better.
There you go. And for buyers, I think you summed it up. Who you hire matters, and make sure you know what the person in front of you is capable of before you hire them. That's all. Yeah. And there's a lot of great real estate agents out there, a lot of experienced real estate agents that you can trust. Make sure that you're using someone that has a track record that you can count on. And
interview them, right? Just because they're the first one that you see does not mean they're the best one for you.
Yeah. There's a stat somewhere out there. It's like, I don't know, somewhere in the 80s, like 87% or something like that, of people use the first agent they talk to.
And I have a feeling that stat is going to go down.
Yes.
Especially if they're on the hook for now, hey, I'm choosing to do business and I have to pay for that service.
Right.
I want the best. Right.
All right. Well, I guess that's the end of the podcast, our first podcast with
Mark Jones and Hersh.
All right. Take care. See you next time.